He never said his name. But if you were listening closely, you didn't need him to. When Andrew Berry sat down to explain the Cleveland Browns head coaching search, it sounded like a standard executive breakdown. Corporate comparisons, CEO language, strategy alignment, vision for the future. On the surface, it was just a general manager detailing why Todd Monken was the right hire for the Cleveland Browns. But then he went back to 2020. He brought up the moment they surrounded a young quarterback with everything he needed to succeed, specifically referencing Baker Mayfield. He talked about investment, about building the offense around the quarterback, about making sure the scheme fits the player instead of forcing the player into the scheme. And that's where things got interesting. Because today, the Browns once again have a young quarterback on the roster, Shedeur Sanders. And while Berry never mentioned him directly, the timing, the language, and even the visuals from the team's official interview have fans reading between the lines. Was this just a historical comparison? Or was it a quiet signal about the direction of the franchise heading into 2026? Berry emphasized adaptability. He stressed finding a coach who doesn't have a rigid system, but instead molds his offense to the personnel. That detail matters, because when a front office openly prioritizes flexibility and offensive investment, it usually means one thing: the quarterback is the centerpiece. And if that's true, then this coaching hire may have revealed more than most people realized. This wasn't just about replacing a head coach. It may have been about confirming who the Browns are preparing to build around next. And once you connect those dots, the message becomes a lot louder than it first appeared. That 2020 reference wasn't accidental. When Andrew Berry brought up how the Browns structured their offseason around Baker Mayfield, he wasn't just reminiscing. He was outlining a blueprint. Back then, the mission was clear: stabilize the offense, protect the young quarterback, and invest heavily on that side of the ball so everything could finally click. The defense, it was patchwork. The priorities were obvious. Anyone watching could see where the resources were going. And according to Berry's own words, the organization finds itself in a similar spot now, just on the opposite side of the ball. That phrase matters, because when executives speak publicly, they choose comparisons carefully. They don't casually bring up former quarterbacks unless the parallel serves a purpose. And the parallel here is hard to ignore. Young quarterback, offensive investment, and a coaching hire designed to elevate that side of the roster. Now, to be clear, Berry never declared that Shedeur Sanders is the franchise cornerstone. There's been no official statement handing anyone the QB1 label for 2026. But fans and analysts have pointed out that the language mirrors the approach Cleveland took when they were fully committed to building around Mayfield. It's been said that front offices often signal their intentions months before they make formal announcements. And if that's the case here, the signal might already be flashing. Because if the Browns are repeating the 2020 model, prioritizing offense, aligning the coaching hire with quarterback development, and reshaping resource allocation, then this isn't just about hiring a head coach. It's about preparing the environment for someone to take control of it. And that leads to the next piece of the puzzle. Why was Todd Monken the perfect fit for this specific moment? Here, where the story really sharpens. When Andrew Berry described the coaching search, he didn't talk about personality first. He didn't talk about culture slogans. He compared hiring a head coach to selecting a CEO: strategic, impactful, measured. And then he kept repeating one key idea: alignment. The Browns cast a wide net: external candidates, internal candidates like Jim Schwartz, different backgrounds, different philosophies. But according to Berry, what separated Todd Monken wasn't just experience. It was adaptability. Monken has coached in college and the pros. He's worked with mobile quarterbacks, pocket passers, veterans, young prospects, air raid concepts, power run game. Tempo shifts, spread formations. Instead of forcing players into a rigid system, his reputation is built around adjusting the scheme to the personnel. That detail wasn't small, because when a front office emphasizes fluid offense and adapting to the quarterback, it signals that they don't want another square peg, round hole situation. They want flexibility, they want development, they want growth. And that's where speculation naturally enters the conversation. If you're a team with a young quarterback on the roster, someone dynamic, someone polarizing, someone with upside, wouldn't adaptability be exactly what you're looking for? Again, Barry never said it outright. He didn't announce a starter. He didn't crown anyone. But fans have been quick to connect the dots between Monken's skill set and the kind of quarterback development Cleveland may be prioritizing moving forward. Because hearing a coach isn't just about Sunday play calling. It's about long-term vision. And if Monken truly represents a shift toward molding the offense around talent instead of forcing talent into structure, then the Browns might be preparing for a very specific kind of quarterback to thrive. Which brings us to the question everyone is asking. Was this hire quietly tailored with someone already in mind? Now this is where it gets interesting. Because while Andrew Barry never directly mentioned Shedeur Sanders, fans immediately noticed something subtle. During the official interview posted by the Cleveland Browns, visuals connected to Sanders were shown in the background while Barry discussed offensive investment and quarterback development. Coincidence? Maybe. But NFL organizations are meticulous with their media production. Very little is accidental. Barry talked about surrounding the young quarterback with everything necessary to succeed. He stressed allocating resources to the offensive side of the ball. He emphasized collaboration between coach and front office to ensure the vision stays aligned. Those aren't random buzzwords. Those are structural commitments. Now, to frame this properly, there has been no official declaration that Sanders is QB1. No depth chart announcement. No training camp confirmation. What we're discussing is interpretation. And right now, a lot of fans are interpreting Barry's comments as a quiet endorsement. Because here's the logic. If you're rebuilding the offense, if you're prioritizing quarterback development, if you're hearing one of the most adaptable offensive minds available, then someone is being positioned as the focal point. And Sanders just happens to be the most intriguing young quarterback on that roster. It's been said that front offices often communicate direction without spelling it out directly. Executives avoid headlines. They avoid premature controversy, but they drop breadcrumbs. And Barry dropped several. The comparison to Baker Mayfield. The opposite side of the ball resource shift. The adaptability emphasis. The timing. Individually, each comment seems harmless. Together, they paint a very specific picture. And if that picture is accurate, then this isn't just about a coaching hire. It's about a power shift inside the franchise. But here's the bigger question. If the Browns are quietly building around Sanders, what does that mean for everyone else in that quarterback room? Here's something front offices rarely hide. Where they spend is where they believe. When Andrew Barry talked about being in a similar spot to 2020 just flipped, he was referencing resource allocation. Back then, the Browns poured attention into supporting Baker Mayfield. Weapons, protection, scheme upgrades, everything pointed toward maximizing the offense. Now Barry says they're preparing to invest heavily again. That's not small talk. That's organizational direction. When a franchise publicly emphasizes reworking the offense, it usually signals that the quarterback position is about to become the centerpiece again. You don't rebuild a system unless you're confident someone is going to operate it. And this is where speculation becomes strategic rather than emotional. There hasn't been a public QB1 announcement for 2026. Competition will likely remain through camp. But if Cleveland is aligning its coaching hire, resources, and philosophical direction around offensive flexibility, it suggests they're planning for a quarterback who benefits from that freedom. That description fits certain player archetypes more than others. It fits a young quarterback still growing. It fits someone with mobility. It fits someone who thrives when structure adjusts to him, rather than the other way around. Again, no official confirmation. But when you follow the money and follow the structural adjustments, patterns emerge. Offensive line focus, skill position emphasis, scheme modernization. Those aren't neutral moves, they're directional. And direction inside an NFL building is rarely random. Because if the Browns were unsure about who they wanted leading the offense, the messaging would be different. It would be cautious. It would stress competition above all. Instead, the messaging has been about alignment. And alignment only happens when leadership believes the right pieces are already in place, or about to be. Which leads to the tension nobody's openly discussing yet. If this truly becomes Shedeur's offense, someone else inevitably gets squeezed out of the picture. Here's the part that makes this bigger than just a coaching hire. When Andrew Berry openly talks about shifting investment toward the offense, that's not routine off-season talk. That's a directional statement about 2026. In the NFL, money and resources tell the real story. If a team plans to lean on defense, you see it in contracts, draft capital, and coordinator hires. If a team plans to empower its quarterback, you see it in scheme flexibility, protection upgrades, and playmaker additions. And right now, the language coming out of Cleveland suggests the offense is about to become the focal point again. Berry compared this moment to 2020, when the Browns built around Baker Mayfield to stabilize the franchise. That wasn't accidental nostalgia. It was a reminder of how they operate when they believe a young quarterback deserves structure and support. So what does that signal now? It suggests that Cleveland isn't preparing for a short-term patch. They're preparing for development, for continuity, for growth on that side of the ball. And when you combine that with the hearing of Todd Monken, known for adapting systems to quarterbacks rather than forcing quarterbacks into rigid playbooks, the picture becomes clearer. Now, to frame this responsibly, there has been no official announcement naming Shedeur Sanders as the uncontested starter for 2026. Competition is part of every offseason, but fans are speculating that the structural moves point in his direction. Because you don't rebuild an offense unless you expect someone to lead it long-term. And if 2026 truly becomes the year Cleveland pivots fully toward offensive identity, then this offseason may be remembered as the quiet turning point, the moment the Browns decided who their future revolves around, without ever saying it outright. Now let's talk about the part nobody says out loud. Every quarterback room in the NFL understands one truth: signals matter. When a franchise hires a coach known for adaptability, when the general manager references building around a young quarterback, when off-season resources lean heavily toward offense, the quarterbacks in that building feel it, even if nothing is officially announced. Right now, the Cleveland Browns haven't declared a clear-cut QB1 for 2026. On paper, competition likely remains. Coaches will say all the right things about earning reps, battling in camp, and letting performance decide. But locker rooms read between the lines, just like fans do. If Todd Monken was hired specifically because he molds his offense around a quarterback's strengths, then naturally the question becomes, whose strengths? Because adaptable systems aren't built for placeholders. They're built for investments. And when Andrew Berry references the 2020 Baker blueprint, it subtly reinforces the idea that Cleveland sees itself in a similar developmental phase, just at a different stage of roster construction. Now again, This isn't confirmation that Shedeur Sanders has locked up the job. It's interpretation. It's reading organizational behavior. But NFL history shows that once a team aligns front office philosophy, coaching style, and financial priorities, the quarterback plan usually isn't far behind. And here, where tension naturally builds. If Sanders is being positioned as the long-term focal point, the competition doesn't just become about skill. It becomes about timeline, about who fits the vision, about who aligns with where the franchise wants to be 2 or 3 years from now. That shifts leverage. Because quarterbacks don't just compete against each other, they compete against organizational direction. And right now, the direction feels clear, which sets up the final question that could define this entire offseason. Was this coaching hire the Browns' quiet confirmation that the future is already decided? This is the question everyone is circling, even if nobody inside the building is saying it directly. Has Shedeur Sanders quietly become the guy? Let's lay it out clearly. The Browns hire Todd Monken, a coach praised for adapting to quarterbacks rather than forcing quarterbacks into rigid systems. The general manager, Andrew Berry, references the 2020 blueprint of surrounding a young QB with resources. The messaging emphasizes offensive investment and long-term alignment. Individually, those moves feel strategic. Together, they feel intentional. Now, to be fair, there has been no official declaration naming Sanders the uncontested starter for 2026. NFL teams thrive on competition narratives during the offseason. Coaches will always say, nothing is given, and technically, that remains true. But here where things shift. In professional football, organizations don't redesign their philosophy for uncertainty. They redesign it for commitment. If Cleveland were unsure about their quarterback direction, the tone would likely be more cautious, more neutral, more open-ended. Instead, the language has leaned toward structure, development, and alignment. And that suggests belief. It's been said that when a franchise begins aligning coaching hires, financial priorities, and public messaging around offense, it usually means they see a quarterback worth building around. That doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't eliminate competition, but it does shape the battlefield. If this truly becomes Sanders' offense, the evaluation process changes. The playbook may tilt toward his strengths. The offseason acquisitions may mirror his skill set. The margin for error may widen because the organization wants growth, not quick judgment. And that's how quarterback rooms quietly shift from open competition to directional development. No dramatic announcement. No headline proclaiming QB1. Just momentum. So is it officially Shedeur's job? Not on paper. But if you follow the breadcrumbs, the structure, and the strategy, it might already be trending that way. And if that momentum continues through camp, this offseason won't be remembered as just a coaching change. It'll be remembered as the moment Cleveland chose its future, without ever needing to say it out loud. Step back and look at the full picture. This wasn't just a routine coaching hire. It wasn't just corporate language from Andrew Berry about alignment and strategy. When you connect the 2020 comparison, the offensive investment shift, and the hearing of Todd Monken, it starts to feel like something bigger. It feels like positioning. Back in 2020, the Browns made it clear they were going to build around Baker Mayfield. They structured the offense to support him. They invested accordingly. And for a moment, the franchise identity revolved around that decision. Now Berry says they're in a similar spot, just flipped. That phrase alone may end up defining this entire offseason. Because if Cleveland is once again preparing to anchor its identity around the offensive side of the ball, then someone is expected to lead that charge. And while no one has officially declared Shedeur Sanders as the face of the future, the structural clues are difficult to ignore. adaptable coaching, offensive prioritization, quarterback development emphasis. Those aren't short-term patches. Those are foundational moves. Now, this doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't promise a breakout season. It doesn't eliminate competition, but it does suggest direction. And in the NFL, direction is everything. If Sanders thrives under Monken's system, the narrative shifts completely. This becomes the smart pivot, the calculated reset, the front office trusting its evaluation process. If it struggles, critics will revisit every breadcrumb from this offseason and question whether the commitment came too soon. Either way, this hire may mark the moment Cleveland quietly reshaped its power structure. Not with a dramatic announcement, not with a bold headline, but with strategic alignment. And sometimes, the most important decisions in football aren't the ones shouted from the podium. They're the ones revealed between the lines.